Good Friday. Actually, it is a Good Friday because it is Good Friday. So, if you're here, say hi, chat with everyone. I hope the sound works and all the rest. I think we're going to have fun. Hope this morning. Uh, the goal of this is to answer your questions about homeschooling, parenting, um, marriage, the things that all would relate to the education of the kids, especially homeschooling. Um, that's the stuff we do and have done. I'm Fred Lybrand. We've got 5 kids that are grown, have 11 grandkids. They were our children were homeschooled, college grads, got jobs, involved in their community, married, doing life, helping out with this world, I think. So if the sound sounds good, please text me or write in the comments that it sounds good, and we'll get going. So what I want to do is in this, I want to answer your questions. So get your homeschooling, and home, like marriage, parenting, home questions, but homeschooling especially, ready or put them in, and I'll try to think through them with you a little bit. But before that, I always like to teach a little something. So what I wanted to teach you about um, was I was hoping I could share my screen. I still think I might can. Entire screen. Okay, share. There we go. I'm going to catch on. So what I want to talk about briefly is if you go into if you own our courses, and you can subscribe, for $9.95 a month and get all but the writing course. So you get basically 12 courses. There's some ebooks that come with it. I want to walk through something in one of the ebooks. So I'm going to sign into Jody's account. And when you get in here, you can scroll down through all these courses: how to homeschool 30 minutes a day, master emotions, focus, goals, problem solving, right? All these things. So there are these ebooks. And so I'm clicking on the ebook access. And so there are these 4 books I've written. I want to go to the parenting one because I want to invite you to think with me just a little bit about an insight on parenting that most people won't tell you. We live in a really strange world. I'm noticing more and more everybody's obsessed with how the kids feel. Not saying that's not a good thing, but teaching them to manage and process how they feel is different than catering to how they feel. Because there's like a weird theory that if kids are happy in childhood, they'll be happy in adulthood. But that's not actually a correlation exactly. What you're wanting to do is raise them to be happy adults. With that in mind, what I want to share with you is one fundamental issue under this: the absolute quickest way to help your child change. Spoiler alert, the absolute quickest way is to have a good relationship between the 2 parents, if there are 2 parents, in any sense, married or not. The better the marriage relationship, the better the kids do. You almost don't need parenting techniques when the relationship's good. Both, they help. But there's a whole chapter in there about working on the marriage as the leverage. But inside of that, there's still an entirely valuable set of questions that I want to point you to. But it works like this. What we finally realized in parenting was that our kids were learning, and I've shared this before, learning to learning to behave and interact and function based on what we encourage and discourage. So like speaking, I mentioned before, if you don't respond to what they say until they say the right word, they'll learn that word, right? So that's sort of the game. But in human behavior, it's a little more complicated. They have internal desires, and then they have some external need or some external influence on them. And if you combine those in a way that they're rewarded or encouraged, they'll do that. And if they're discouraged, they'll tend to do that. but it's still got to connect to the person. So if your child, I have a child that loves avocados, we probably could have bribed her with them. But there are other kids, not so much. Spaghetti, especially. Boy, that was a hit or miss. Some loved it, some hated it. Well, that's the game in here. And so the idea is if you see a behavior, you're encouraging it. And if you don't see a behavior, you're not, So it's an encourage, discourage type thing. And so here's all I want you to know. It's this phrase that's magical. You look at your child's behavior it could go either way, good or bad, but the frustrating behavior, and just say, how did I teach you? How did I teach you to, and fill in the blank? How did I teach you to be rude? You don't have to say it to the child. Say it to yourself. How did I teach you to fight on doing your math? How did I teach you that? Because if you'll get that mindset, you can start noticing. I'm going to show you an easier way to find it too. But you'll notice exactly what's going on to teach them. And there's a subtle help to you because you're going to realize, man, if I taught them to not like math, I bet I could teach them to like math. And so suddenly you're empowered. So what I want to do is, I downloaded this actually already. And I thought it was open somewhere. I had high hopes it was opened. But I downloaded it. You can hit up here and you can download it because I can read it easier. So go to Explorer, go to my downloads. I'll double click on the book. Book pops up. Okay. So here's the book. And it could be a little bigger maybe. But all I want to do is go down to the worksheets and show you this worksheet, the 4 magic questions. So this is just a little instruction part. Still want your questions. Please post them now. But these 4 magic questions work like this. 1, what do I see? Number 2, what do I want to see? Number 3, how am I encouraging what I see? And number 4, how can I encourage what I want to see and discourage all else? And then it tells you what the behavioral problems are, etc. So early days learning this, I give an example. What do I see? Our oldest son started screaming. He had a younger sister who was 6 months or so, and he would scream at his mother. She reported it. So what do I see? Him screaming. Except I actually went and watched him for a half day. So I watched this screaming event happening. He wasn't screaming all the time, but he started screaming. And I said, so what do I see? I'm going to come back to that. What do I want to see? I want him to nicely ask his mother for help, right? Or whatever he needs, because that's what he was doing. He's screaming at his mom. So what do I see? I see him trying to talk to his mother and scream what he needs. I want to see him politely and quietly talk to his mother. So then we ask, how am I encouraging, or in her context, Jody, how is she encouraging what we see? How is he being encouraged to scream? Well, what I noticed as I watched is Jody was busy with holding a 6-month-old in her arm and who knows, cooking, cleaning, whatever she was doing, all the stuff, the things she was doing at home, maybe schooling stuff, maybe helping a neighbor. I don't know. She just all kinds of stuff. So how am I encouraging it, or how is she encouraging it? It was work like this. Trip started going, Mom, 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 Mother. She wasn't hearing him because she was so busy. So we said, how can we encourage what we want to see and discourage all else? And as simply as, probably stole this from somebody, started tuning in a little better. Just that was enough for Jody. But we started teaching him to put his hand, I think, on her elbow. So she would have a physical thing to get her to notice between the baby and all the rest so she could stop and respond to him. So we told him, we want you to ask nicely and put your hand on the elbow and wait. Okay. And this is a little dinky example, but I'm going to tell you all of these things work this way. It gets more complicated with teens, but it's still the same game, just right, wrong, or indifferent. This is how it works. And these questions allow you to sort of think it through, to get observant, to see how you're encouraging behavior, think about how you could discourage it, and how the game works. So hope that's really helpful to you. And let's see if I can get back to stop sharing the screen and see what's going on. So, Tiffany Locke, thank you so much. I absolutely love that book. I read it twice and gave it to a friend. You know, I like it too. You know, I wrote it in 1996, and I'm sitting there going, you know, I have young kids. Who am I to say anything? But I'd say it's all panned out, you know, pretty well. I think you know, in terms of the basics of how it works, I think this is what I learned later is called a pivot technique. But I just was trying to figure it out like common sense. How do we make this game work? And we found it worked. It worked great. My favorite story on the planet is that my two oldest sons, when they're older, were fighting with each other, arguing and all. So I took the same principles and thought it through. I was trying to teach them to communicate, and all that did is create more conflict with them. So I set up a game where if they would solve their own conflicts every month, if we had no conflicts, so here's the positive, no conflicts, we'd give them a day off school that they could bag, you know, use whenever they wanted to, but they get a whole free day. Headmaster, why not? So they would get a free day. And the negative consequence was if you keep arguing after a warning, we said we'll give you one more warning. If you keep arguing, you're going to have to sit down and write an essay. And the essay, both of you, the essay is why he's wrong and I'm right. And then we're going to judge the essay. And then whoever wins, best essay, gets to go downtown and eat tres leches with mom and dad. And who loses is going to move rocks in the backyard. So we had discouraging and we had positive, right? And pretty much from that moment on, we never had another conflict for a year and a half at least. They never moved rocks. They never wrote an essay. They got it. They had a structure. They understood the game. So anyway, that's fun. I think you'd find that if you have access to the book, you ought to get it. You can get it online. I'm sure at Amazon, probably cheap copies. It's been out for a while. But I still find those principles very useful. So what questions do you have? I happen to know there's a delay in the system. I have had an interesting conversation online in one of the Facebook groups with someone wrestling with their kid coming out of public school. Sorry for my itchy nose. Coming out of public school and being a little behind in math. And what I shared was I don't really worry about children getting through calculus. We had 3 that did and 2 that didn't. The 2 that didn't cheated and we had to back up and whatever. What I really want a child to do in math is to actually get to the place where they are really proficient with whatever math they know. So the goal is not necessary to just say we did the math, you got exposure, but to really learn the math you know up to that point. So a lot of times kids will go back and find out where they are. So I'll go in old books and I'll go back and try to find out what do they understand pretty clearly. And then we'll keep doing it till they start running into problem, and we'll start there because I want them to own that. And so we slow down. We would even have kids, if they really had a problem with the lesson, so do it over several times. You know, I always made them read the lesson out loud to me. That seemed to help. I made them work problems out loud for me so I could listen to how they worked. And our kids, you always had to show your work. They were plenty smart. They could do it like that. You know, Brooks made a perfect SAT math score, double majored in economics and mathematics at the University of Texas in Austin. But Brooks had to work out his math because when you get in complicated math, that's where we can find out where the mistakes are and you can learn. So they had to really work it out, as it were. So in math, getting wherever they are, what you want to do is just help them improve constantly. So really master what's going on. And we would do that by maintaining at least a 90 or better on their daily homework. We'd give occasional tests that come in the book. But basically, we're trying to get them to be focused and careful. And when people miss math, they only miss it for two reasons. They either don't understand it, or they have made careless mistakes. And so we would grade pretty harshly on careless mistakes, and you certainly need to understand it. But we slow down on the tough stuff so they do fewer problems, but really learn them, and could speed up on review materials like happens. So I'm not getting any questions. I can make up questions all day long. Not really the aim of this story. Chat. Let's see if I'm not getting something. Social comments display. Nope. It looks like it's showing up fine. I know there's delay in the system, so type your questions up. Look, what is it? There are no dumb questions. And look, somebody else is asking these same things. I just don't know what all the questions are on your heart and mind. It could be organizational. It could be behavioral. It could be practical. If I don't know an answer, I'll tell you I don't know. We'll have to look it up. Hey, Jennifer Moore, first time here in Kentucky. Excellent. Awesome. Rock and roll. Hope y'all are safe, and tornadoes and all the rest are past for now. We have kids who live in Montgomery, Alabama, so they're due, or were due, to all the mess up there. I probably want to start commenting on culture on occasion, because I don't want to get in trouble. I don't want to get banned or shadow banned or whatever these things are. But we are facing curiosities in our culture. And some of it is parenting philosophy. Some of it is the nature of social networks. There's all kinds of things I've had background in. Eating disorders. I've worked with a number of people with that kind of stuff. Or, 25 years of counseling. I've done a little of everything. Suicide, maybe body shaming and bullying and all these things. Homeschooling gets to avoid a lot of it because of the environment. And yet there's still that ongoing influence. So we'll think about that as time goes on. So Tiffany throws out, for the life of me, I can't seem to get my 10-year-old daughter to quit biting her nails. Oh, excellent. We've tried painting her nails and chewing gum. She does it when she's stressed or bored. Now my 5-year-old son is, I assume it's going to say, biting his nails or something. So we had, so some kids are a little more prone to these kind of habits or tics. It's kind of in that direction. One of our kids he had a couple of things he did. One, he walked on his tippy toes a lot, which gets to be a problem because your heel cord will shrink, just like when someone wears high heels all the time. They can't really flatten their feet if they wear them too much and don't stretch. One of our kids in particular, the other thing he had is blinked. He'd get into this, and especially under stress. Well, I'll tell you how we dealt with that. We took him to our friend and optometrist, and he diagnosed it. He says, yeah, he's just stressed. It's just a tic. And he gave us some eye drops, and he said, put these in and tell him that it'll cure his blinking. And we did, and it did. That may not be the best of all ways to do it, but I guess I'm starting with sympathizing with the difficulty. So here's the trick with tics and such, Tiffany. So like a daughter that's chewing her nails. What you really want to do with any behavior is not get them to stop it. That's not the goal. The goal is to get them to do something else instead of it. So it's a replacement behavior. We talk about this in the book. So trying to get her to figure out what can she do with her hands instead of biting her nails. It could be sit on them. It could be, I don't know, some exercises. I can do my exercises. It could be the thing we used to do where we fold our hand up and get somebody to pick which finger to move. Um, but it's something else. It may be, maybe she needs to wear gloves. Meaning, look, when you feel like it. So the goal is to wear gloves until the feeling goes away. I don't live there, so it's going to take some creativity. But the bottom line would be, think in terms of a replacement behavior. We've had kids. I remember a kid that we had would bite her finger and say no, or no to herself, and that seemed to work for her. So a lot of it comes down to their choice, but they need to know what you want, not what you don't want. So if that makes sense, yeah. And fidget toys might be good. Jody has them out. She has a box of them for Sunday school for fidgeting time. But those little spinners and all, maybe she can have a fidget toy instead of a bite nails, or maybe it's you need to go out and run around the house and burn some exercise. I don't know, but looking at your daughter and just think about what is the behavior we want. So not bite nails is correct, but giving her something to do is a whole different game. Just like with our kids, we found if we didn't if we planted a plant, we'd say to them, you can wave at it, but you can't touch it. Otherwise, toddlers would just pull it out. Or things at shelves at the store, we'd say, hey, you can wave at it, but you can't touch it. And that seemed to work really well. And we see our kids doing that little thing with the grandkids too. Suggestions to teach 5-year-old how to read. Honestly, most any phonics game works, but this 100 lessons, somebody knows that book. We didn't use it, but my grandson yesterday showed me, he's 4, and he was showing read, cat, and hat, and whatever. He had the down. But it's like reading in 100 easy lessons. Somebody will post it. That might be a good place to start. Alpha Phonics is one old classic one. Any of these phonics programs, as long as you're teaching them phonics ultimately so they can decode it, you're golden. If you skip the phonics and run to look, say, or whole language, there's evidence that it can generate some actual learning disabilities because they're not hooking the brain up the way it's wired to understand the game with the charade, as it were, of words. And so we need to know how to decode the words. Michelle, morning from Washington. I'm homeschooling, work full time. Whew. Any suggestions on how to keep kids doing their work when I can't be on them the whole time? Yeah, so ideally they would hold themselves accountable, but on some level you need to measure what they're getting done. So if they're not getting it done, you'll know. So did they do their math? Is it filled in? Is it graded? You're going to have to do that. We finally got the older kids to grade each other. But getting a measure, you can't, the way they say it in the business world is you can't manage what you don't measure. And I think that goes with homeschool too. So how many pages did they read? Do you have them debrief what those pages are about? You could even have them keep up with the amount of time they spend on each subject. Anything that generates a little accountability actually should take care of it. If you have other behavioral issues with your kids, that's a entirely different story. But that's the idea. So the more you can measure to know, did they get their work done? And if you find out they didn't, they got to go back and do it. Most kids know if they can get their work done and be done with it, they'd rather do that game. But if you delay things to the next day, it'll always be a problem. You got to complete the day's work in that day, preferably early, and if not, later. But you don't really get to go do the fun things until you've done school. Maybe you can interject a fun thing, and school can be fun too. But what you're trying to do with homeschool is get them to sit down, look at the stuff like their math, and go, I don't feel like doing this. Oh, well, and then do it, because that's a disciplined part of the game, and they've got to learn it. That's going to carry them for the rest of their life. Jennifer, Says advice for older children, 14 and 17, to gain their own motivation and tracking progress. We have some, it's a great question. We have some, all these are great questions. We have some videos in our membership area on motivating children. So those are worth watching, whether it's motivating them to write or motivating or maybe a behavior thing. You can find them all in there. So their own motivation and tracking progress. So very similar to what I just said about measuring. But bear in mind, so human motivation works like this. Okay, there's a vision up here, result, an outcome, something you want. I would call it a there, right? And then reality, where you're in, is like here, current reality. And the distance between those is what motivates us. That tension, that creative tension, is where the motive is. So if we want, and by the way, wanting something can be also wanting a result instead of a bad one. So there's a not want that kind of plays the same game, but it's always a want. So you have a here, there, and then in between is the path. Okay. So what you're looking at is to try to figure out what is it that they want up here. And 14 and 17, maybe getting closer to thinking about college, career, or something. But getting them to spell out what they really want and then understanding where they are and then the path in between, right? There, here, path is what it's going to take to get there. So when our kids, 17, they want to go to college. So we said, you're going to need a good SAT score because you're homeschooled. And that was the way the game worked then, at least for the schools who wanted to do the nature of it. So I saw a comment. My brain went off there. When you're looking at this relationship between what you want them to have or their motivation, and in particular, we were dealing with SAT. We said, you want to get in college, you need to get a score. So what's it going to take? And we said, you're going to have to learn how these questions work so you can just do them. And you're going to need to take a lot of practice tests to get yourself ready so you don't have to think about how the test works. You'll have strategies, know how to do it. So we did that. We also found some coaching we could get, at least with Brooks, on some of the nature of how the SAT worked. But once he understood it, we didn't really have to set up any schedules for him. He just had a game plan for how he wanted to do it. Could be unique to him, but it's sort of the same with all of them. Whenever a child, or especially 14 to 17, they're growing, they're moving towards adulthood, getting their own motivation, tracking progress, they can just fill in, what was their score on math? How many pages did they read? The writing and giving them feedback every day is going to be its own record. So at least on these things, you can tell where you are. Same thing if they take a foreign language course, you got to take tests and see where you are. So somehow figure out a measurement game. But I'd say really talk with the child about what is it they really want? What do they want to gain out of school? And it may be, I just want to get it finished. Well, fine. That's a motive. They want to get it finished. What's it going to take to get it finished? Get started, keep working, and then get finished. And then we keep a record of it somehow. J-Rock Stacks, that's cool. My son did your writing course several years ago and are still prolific writers. Thank you for your work. That is so rewarding because that's what we've seen. It's such a strange thing. It's funny that no one's ever just stolen and copied it. I'm probably not, I'm not, Taylor Swift of writing courses, but it is a very unusual approach that does free people to write. And I've got hundreds of examples of people saying that same thing. So that's quite often. Thanks for the encouragement. Is there any other way to memorize math facts other than Robinson flashcards? My 7-year-old is so bored. So let's talk about boredom. That's great. Of course, there are other ways. Get a good mnemonics program. We have a memory course inside of one of our 12 courses inside the $9.95 subscription. And that course helps kids learn how to use mnemonics and what I call organic mnemonics to make memorizing a little more fun. But boredom, you want to understand boredom. So I've drawn this before. I need to probably draw it again or keep one available. So it's a matrix, and the matrix is between how competent they are. That's like the Y, and then how big a challenge, the X. Or let's do them the other way: challenge and how competent. So when you have a high challenge and low competence, right? High challenge, low competence, that generates anxiety in a child because you're stretching way beyond what they can do, or at least their perception. So that's anxious. High challenge, low competence. But the opposite end is if you have low challenge and very high competence, like they're really pretty sharp or smart or quick, then that means the challenge is too low. So bored kids are not in the right frame. So the middle is the flow state, as they say, where the challenge and the competence or the skill meet. So I would say if you tell me a child's bored, it tells me he's not challenged, or he could be using boredom as a manipulative technique to get you to obey him. That's another story altogether. So if that's the game, if they're bored, if your 5-year-old is bored, 7-year-old son is bored, he's not probably memorizing enough of the cards. It's going too slow for him, So it's like you could just say, memorize these and get on to math. That's what we're trying to do here. And if he's doing, let's say he's doing 10 cards in a session, or maybe he's doing 20, well, try 40. Maybe 40 is too much. Try 80. I don't know. But say, look, if you're bored, you're not challenged enough. So what we need to do is I want you to go through these flashcards. You go through 40 flashcards and learn them. And, you have this amount of time. So that's another piece of the challenge. If he's got infinite amount of time to look at the cards, that'll be boring. So he needs a limited amount of time. We're going to do this number of flashcards in this period of time. And then I'm going to test you and see how well you did. Maybe it's just 10 cards in 10 minutes, and that's all you do a day. You're going to be way down the road in no time. You do those same cards for a number of days and figure out what his learning speed is. But time limits take care of boredom as well, because you're upping the challenge to be able to get it done in that period of time. So that's the game, I think. Other ways to memorize them, I don't know. Other flashcards, write them out, audio, record yourself and listen. I'm sure if you Google online how to teach kids math facts, they probably got games out there. They got, Lego. They probably has a Lego program that, does that. So I'm sure there's more out there. Just Google it. Good questions. What else? I wonder if these are popping up. I used to do that. I showed it. There we go. I should have been doing this, but maybe y'all can see that too. Yep, we did that one. Let's see. Oh, I'm going the wrong direction. Sorry, gang. Yeah, so that was the Math Facts program we were looking at, and I think that's a common struggle. By the way, I'll tell you the way we did it. Jody got them to go through their Math Facts, and they got to a competence point. I've mentioned this before, and I tested them, and so I only did about 10 items. I'd do 10 cards. Who cares, 3 times 7 and 6 times 8. Who knows what I did? So just some random ones. 10, maybe 15. And if they pretty much got them all right, I was golden, because here's what I also knew. If we got down the road, and they pretty well knew their math flat facts, but we got down the road and they started showing they really didn't, well, we'd just stop and do math facts for a week. that might, and we did that 2 or 3 times with a couple of the kids, or maybe a couple of the kids, that we got down the road. They didn't know their math facts that well. We stopped, reviewed them. Well, they've been practicing all that time, and sometimes it's just a narrow band of math facts. So it's like, yeah, get them ready, but don't make your standard crazy, because you can always pause and do a refresher course. In fact, I would say if you're smart, you're going to do a refresher course of math facts for a break 1 week, maybe a short week, like before Thanksgiving, if they work those 2 days or sometime, who cares? But somewhere in there, I'd go back and review the math facts just for good measure. Just like it's not a bad idea to go back and review phonics just for good measure. All right, what else? I got 20 more minutes. Need 3 good questions. Good meaning something I know, something that'll take about 7 minutes. Okay, so trying to get up here. Let's see if this works. I don't know how this works, obviously. I figured out. Sorry, something was blocking me. Could you speak more about using boredom or even avoidance as a manipulative technique? Well, so human beings, all right. So look, all of us are doing this. We're using our behavior. We feel a certain way, so we use our behavior to get the other person to feel a certain way, so they'll behave differently that matches what we want. But they're doing the same thing, so they're countering with feedback or with other actions. So this is kind of the game that we're all caught in. It's a dance of manipulation, and it takes 2 to play. So if bored is something that like triggers you, like you don't want your kids to be bored, like you were bored as a kid and you think it's torturous or something like that, it could be used against you, just like anything. I remember one time Trip, our oldest, said when he was a little guy, he said, "You're not a very nice mommy." And I took him and intervened because I heard it. And I said, yeah, we're not going to hear that again, because what if a mommy was worried about if her kids liked them? And a lot of mommies are. They want their kids to like them. So they make them stuff and do stuff, because if the kids don't like you, then they'll grow up not letting you see the grandkids, not doing much with you, and eventually you'll just die alone, right? So you got to make your kids like you. And to do that, you got to give them whatever they want. But giving people whatever they want doesn't make people like you. I mean, haven't you ever dated? And when you date somebody, they do anything you want. Isn't that gross? Well, I'd say it's the same game with boredom. So if you've got an issue with boredom, one of the things to look at is this a real problem of challenge, that they're bored, or are they using it because that bothers you and you're worried about them thinking you bored them? School is boring. They'll tell the neighbors and this and that and whatever. I mean, children, I think their default mood is to say, it's boring. That's just how they get out of stuff all the time. And so it's like, yeah, we'll make it interesting. Learn how to do it. It's similar to, we don't have anything to do. Well, they're trying to give me a job. Oh, me as a dad, I've got to give my children something to do, or mom. So, I would give them a piece of paper and say, okay, write down 10 ideas of what y'all could do. And they come back with a list. And I look at it and I go, you need more help? And they go, nope. And they went off and did stuff. Learn how to do it. So you just want to pay attention to, is it really boredom? And why is that an excuse? Like I would say to my kids, if you're that bored, you probably need to do it faster, like if you don't like your Brussels sprouts, but you have to eat them, just eat them faster. That'd be the game. So let's see. Wilson says, how would you motivate a reluctant writer, 7-year-old daughter? So similar conversation and game. But 7-year-old is pretty young to be writing, in my opinion. So I don't know what you mean. You might type that up there. You're talking about copy work, or are they actually writing? I mean, it could be bright and really good, with the tweezer dexterity, the ability to write. But in my experience, 8, really 9 is when we really saw the um, good writers start really doing stuff. But the age isn't relevant. Okay, so let's just assume it's a kid. So how would you motivate a reluctant writer? Well, that's why we have the writing course. I'd get underneath, why are they reluctant? Is it because they can't think of ideas? We have a whole course on how to have infinite number of ideas of what to write about. Uh, are they reluctant because they think it says something about them, and they're think it'll sound stupid, and that'll mean they're stupid or something like that, so they're reluctant? Well, we deal with that principle of separation, some things that go with it. What is behind the reluctance? If you could share that too. But I can tell you, if you want, my favorite story was Holmes, who is now a journalist in Washington, right? Worked for the Writing Center at the University of Texas, got a degree in corporate communications, and wanted to be a journalist. And see, he writes. So Holmes, though, would come down, sit across from his brother, it's just two of them, and fall asleep during writing time. And then kind of wake up and somehow he wrote 2 sentences. And I looked at that and I went, what is going on? I get he's sleepy, but there's another problem. And he's definitely not focused. So I said, how much can I write? We just want to write like these 3 pages, double space. He was probably 16 or so at the time, 17, 16, I'd be. And so I sat down and timed myself. And I timed myself, and I could write, those 3 pages in 3 minutes or something like that, or less. So I went, there's no way this shouldn't take but a shorter amount of time. So what we did is we had 3 pages, and at the bottom of each page, I gave him 10 minutes on each page. So like, let's say he's going to start writing at 7:30. So the bottom of the first page would be 7:40. The second page would be 7:50. And the third page would be 8 o'clock. Now we're doing 3 because he's an older child, 16 or so. A younger child, maybe just 1 page, double space. So I marked those down there, and I got a timer out for him, and it was a test. Go. And that bugger wrote all 3 pages in like 10 minutes. So one key is to have a time limit on everything you do. If you have forever, you kind of take forever, right? If you're working on a piece of furniture, but it's not for anybody, it's just something to work on, you might work on it occasionally on the weekends forever. If you're giving it as a gift for Christmas and it's December 10th, you're probably focused. There's something powerful about a deadline, a time limit, a target date that kicks things in. But again, how would you motivate a reluctant writer? I'd have a time limit on them getting their writing done. But I also would find out what their reluctance is about and want to address it. So let's see what else we got. She's refusing to do her dictation and copy work. We're still working on full proper sentences and narrative. So that's a narration. So again, you might want to do a time, but a refusing, you call that reluctance, someone, if a girl's reluctant to go to the prom, but she can be talked into it, doesn't like the dress, doesn't like the boy or whatever, that's different than someone says, I'm not going to the prom. That's a different game. So if she's refusing to do her dictation and copy work, she must think that there's an option for her, that she can negotiate out of it, that may be where you want to start thinking this through and just say, look, this is going to happen. You're going to get it done. All we're doing is figuring out how to do it. And then back to the earlier part of this discussion, what do I see? I'd go through those questions. What do I see? What I want to see? You can play back this video when it's posted. But go through it and look, how is there a payoff for her if she gets it done? And is it there a negative consequence? The negative consequence ought to be that she has a time limit, and if she gets it done, done. And if she doesn't get it done, she's got to go back in the afternoon and finish. Not then. Get a time limit, get it finished, make sure it's fair, and then in the afternoon she has to do it. That's usually a negative enough consequence, and getting it done is kind of its own reward. But you might want to motivate her, say, look, you do 5 days in a row of getting your stuff done on time, and I'm going to take you out and buy you an ice cream or whatever turns your crank. Don't do it all the time, but just a payoff for some diligence. Let's see. Yeah, that'd be close enough answer, I think. All right, I've got time for one more question. If I don't know, was that helpful at all in Wilson, or is there a follow-up question? I know there's delay in the system, so I've got to delay for a second. Anyway, I do hope you're finding this helpful. I find it quite helpful because I don't know, exactly what people are wrestling with. And so I like to, find out. And most of what you wrestle with are human normal things, like the stuff we all wrestle with, So good. That seemed to help and seemed to help. Yeah, this motivation thing, I'll just circle back around and just say, if you'll look at, let's see if I can do this real quick. I'll come back to that question. Just real quick, window, entire screen, share. Yeah, so thought I had this out. I apologize. Here we go. Yeah, so when we see these 4 magic questions, what do I see? I see my daughter reluctant to do blah, 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 blah. What do I want to see? I want her to see her saying, yes, ma'am, I'm done in time. How am I encouraging what I want to see? You need to look at it and say, how do we encourage her to be reluctant? Do we argue? Do we debate? Do we try to come up with fun things to do? We're trying to manage how she feels, Is that a payoff for her? And then how can I encourage what I want to see and discourage all else? Like I said, one would be to set a time limit. What doesn't get done gets done in the afternoon. Too bad. That could have been your playtime. And in a payoff, maybe with the number of days, you get something else, I don't know. Or maybe you do 5 days in a row and I'll dance in the front yard for all the neighbors to laugh at me. Your kids might like that. I have no idea. I'm just saying, be creative, have fun with it. So this next question, this may be our last. Let's see. My 17-year-old son doesn't want to do school anymore. Boy, he's late. Most of us don't want to earlier, but the problem is he's getting close to kind of graduation, adulthood, might get employed, whatever he's thinking. So let me read the rest of it. My 17-year-old son doesn't want to do school anymore, thinks it is a huge waste of time. No intention of any college, more of a hands-on person. All the work I get out of him has very little effort into it. Yeah, and so some people in Colby cognitive index lingo are high implementers, meaning they like to use implements, they like hands-on, they might want to be practical. Some of this is an issue of his own goals, and that's where our goal setting training is helpful. I mean, there's other stuff out there, but getting clarity on his goals. I don't know if he's told you what he wants to be or do, but right now, school needs to be finished on some level or another. So if you can tie, so the way this works, if you can tie school to what he wants, like once you get this done, or we'll lay out a curriculum for you and you can get through sooner, like what's going to be required for you to graduate as senior, not time. Maybe you let him get through earlier. Does he have a job on the side to tolerate school, that he's planning for something. All these things could relate to it, but a lot of it is going to be dependent on what he wants. So if you can tie it that way, like Brooks. So Brooks didn't want to go to college. I mean, he had a perfect SAT math score. He could computer program. He could do all kinds of stuff, and he probably didn't need to go. But as we're talking about it, and then he got there, and it was so boring. Like the first 2 years or so, like no challenge, no anything to him. You know, he's not only bright, he's really hardworking. So that's a bad combination. And but I told him, I said, you told me that you wanted to lead tech team someday. He said, yeah. I said, so your goal, leading a tech team. I said, it may happen if you're Zuckerberg or Musk or something. You not go to college. I can't remember if Musk finished college or not, but Bill Gates, whoever. And you can still lead tech teams. But right now, the world we're living in, at least 4 or 5 years ago, you're going to need a college degree to get in that game to be able to move up to lead tech teams. And so it's just a necessary function. And I'll tell you, it'll get more interesting in a few years because they're just doing all the basics for everybody to catch everybody up. But once he tied that to a higher goal, he was fine. But he just did school faster. He graduated in 3 years instead of 4. And I would say that's a similar thing. If you could lay out for your son what he needs to complete in order to graduate, and you'll let him graduate early, if he'll complete whatever it is, just quit going by time, let him complete it. We did this with all our kids their senior year. We got to a place where I'd give them the final stack of books, and I said, when you've read these, you're done. And they would work really hard and get done a month early, you know, the way it worked for our kids. But it's really going to be a matter of figuring out what he really wants in his challenge and giving him some control. But that's where I want to find out what his goals are, see how I could help him get to them, make sure schooling related to it, because he needs to graduate. You know, if he go pass a GED today, I don't know, is there a complaint? Let him go take it. But I think what I would do is I'd set up a game plan of here's what you need to do to graduate. You got to complete this. You got this course. You got this thing, all these things. You finish them and you're done. And if you finish it, you know, in 6 months, you're done 6 months earlier or whatever, you know, or you're whatever. But just set up the game plan and give them some control over it. That'd be a way to think about it. All right, gang. So 11:25. This has been awesome. I hope you found this helpful. If you would, share it with your friends, post it online, subscribe to the YouTube channel, get people to. What we're trying to do is just promote the cause, because personally, I think homeschoolers are going to be some very important people to help our country in the messy future. Anyway, enjoyed it. See you next Friday. Bless you.